This is Sirens, a new series brought to you by the ladies of Bombshell, where we dissect the institutions of American power. Join us as we sound the alarm on technology, governance, and national security issues, and maybe lure some men to their death. This week, in our mini episode, we are excited to introduce our guest, Kathryn Edwards. She's an economic consultant and the host of the Optimist Economy podcast. Kathryn, welcome.
Hey, y'all. Thank you for having me.
We are so delighted to have you, and I am delighted to have a whole conversation here on Sirens where we talk about economics. It's going to be so great.
I had to get Radha's questions just to back off from the nerdiest of nerdy to okay, you haven't even introduced what that term meant. You actually need to give our listeners just the tiny best of on ramp in order to figure out what on earth is going on as we let two economists go nerd out here. I should also say, Kathryn, we did as our question of the week or the episode rather to introduce. I gave them options that we could either do what you had to look up in the dictionary this week or executive order. And we picked executive order and paid tribute to our Optimist Economy friends down south. Yeah, you're down south.
I'm down south. I'm in Houston, and Robin is in LA. So your optimist friends in small, sprawling metropolises who are probably on a highway right now, and they're probably stuck in traffic because they live in LA and Houston. And you know what? It's not cold. So that's where they are.
We have two economists and two Texans, and it's hard to know which one of those things we're going to talk about most.
Totally.
That is actually that's a fair question. That's a fair point.
Well, so again, really excited to have you on, and really we wanted to start by just kind of trying to look at what is actually happening in the economy. And Kathryn, you've written a lot about this, about the ghost recession, now the ghost recovery. And there's lots of talks about things like low unemployment or economic growth. But can you help us kind of understand why maybe the economy looks good but feels broken, and what is going on holistically in the U.S. economy?
Okay.
Easy question.
Easy question.
Start off simple, and we'll build.
You know what?
There.
Cut me off at 30 minutes, okay? So I always think it's really helpful to zoom out. And if you zoom out and you think of America and its modern economy since World War II, we go through things called business cycles, where the economy grows until it starts to slow down. It enters a recession. We shed jobs. Things get, this is a technical term, rejiggered in the economy, and then we start to grow again. And we think of these cycles as being kind of like a natural part of a capitalist economy. So we've had 13-ish since World War II, and they always start with a recession. And the one that we're in right now started with the pandemic recession in March of 2020, where the U.S. economy ground to a screeching halt and shed over 22 million jobs in a matter of weeks. Unemployment shot up to officially 15%, but unofficially it was closer to 20. 1 in 5 people were looking for work. I mean, it was truly catastrophic. And the business cycle that kicked off has been weird. It just hasn't been like the ones that come before, not just because of the way that it started, but because of the way that the government responded to it, because of the way that people responded to it, the way that businesses responded to it. And it has only been 5.5 years. And yet we have lived lifetimes in this economy since the pandemic. And that, I think, is a good way to orient yourself into what's going on. And that ever since we started to recover from the pandemic, the question has been, when is the shoe going to drop and we enter a quote unquote real recession? This was one that the pandemic forced on us. But what about the one that we were supposed to have? The one that was this, just the economy slows down after it grew for a while. And so this has been this almost constant search and evaluation of the recession is going to come, right? We're about to have it, right? And that is the tenor of economic conversations for almost 5 years. And we've had different candidates as to what has been the cause of the recession we think will come. Is it the recovery package, the inflation that spiked afterwards, or in the case of the most recent presidency, some terrible economic policy that the White House is pursuing? Is we've had different reasons for thinking the economy is going to decline, but we've been looking for it.
But we do see things like growth and some unemployment, some unemployment reduction. So What are these like sort of usually cited numbers on job growth or GDP growth? What are they missing about the economic reality?
So the size of the economy is GDP, and getting bigger is better, and getting smaller is worse. Great. The ability of the economy to produce jobs for the people who want them is the unemployment rate. Higher is worse, lower is better. And these two things are kind of come together in the monthly jobs number, which is the number of jobs that the economy has created in the past month. And what's been happening for about a year is that we are seeing signs that the economy is slowing down, but they're not all happening at the same time. So, like 1 month, GDP will be really weak, and but then the next, or 1 quarter rather, but the next quarter it'll be strong. But in that quarter that GDP was strong, we have terrible job growth, but the unemployment rate doesn't go up. And now we're in a quarter where GDP is going to be strong and job growth is fine, but unemployment is starting to rise at a pretty steady clip. All of these things mean that the economy is slowing down slowly. So one way to think about it is where think of like cars on like a 4-lane street headed towards a red light, right? They're all slowing down, but they're not moving in perfect tandem. Like some car is going to get to the red light first, and another car is going to like maybe coast as long as possible before they have to brake. You can think of the economic indicators as they're all moving towards a red light, but they're not necessarily all stopping at the same time. That's really hard to parse. I mean, it's hard for economists to parse. It's hard for humans, just regular humans out in the world to parse, especially when it has to intersect with how they live their economic lives and what they see in their paycheck and in the grocery cart and their electric bill. And so that all comes together. I have my own version of why I think this is happening and kind of like what's really going on, but you know, a lot of times, especially with recessions, we don't really have a great idea of what caused them until we're well past them. And it's in the wreckage that we see the real cause and not kind of in the slowing down.
Just on this point around that, I love the analogy there of the cars on the highway. I think that is an incredible way to think about this. So, swinging back to our earlier point, is this slowdown of kind of competing slowdowns that we're seeing? Is this what's coming before a full recession, or are we already in one? We're just calling it something else, or is this actually just kind of like I hate to say new thing because it's probably not a new thing, but is this a new moment that is complex? And this is one of the reasons why we're having a hard time describing it, particularly since public sentiment is also a factor here in terms of how any of these numbers or these impacts are perceived.
Okay, few things. One, we don't say that we're in a recession until we're like at least 6 months in. And we'll say it's the National Bureau of Economic Research Business Cycle Dating Committee. Great at parties, believe me. They basically meet to look at all of the economic data and decide if we're in a recession. And they always do it with a significant lag.
Mhm.
So they didn't say that the US entered a recession in 2008. They declared that recession in October to have started the prior December. There's a huge lag. And the reason why is because you don't want to automatically trigger a recession. Like one report comes out that is bad, and now we're in recession. That would instill panic. And it would also give us, less control over stopping a recession from coming. All of these indicators starting to like kind of blink red at different times. That should be motivation to intervene to prevent a recession from happening, which is why we have this distance. It's not just that economists get off on being withholding of economic intelligence and understanding. It's that we also want to give policymakers a chance to say, like, hey, this isn't good, but it's not a recession yet. There's still time for you to do something productive in the economy to prevent one from happening. So that's where a lot of the uncertainty comes from, is that we could be 6 months in a recession before we find out officially that, yeah, this is definitely a downturn. But that's not necessarily for a bad reason. The other thing I would say is, I don't think that the news or the economic data has become harder to parse. I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One is the past 2 recessions we've been through, I don't know how else to describe it. They were big and bad. I mean, the pandemic recession, you knew when it started. It started that week that 4 million people applied for unemployment insurance because they'd all lost their job. I mean, the Great Recession, aka the financial crisis and foreclosure crisis, I mean, it was pretty obvious when banks were closing early so they wouldn't have a run on like the largest banking institutions in America that we were clearly in a recession. But the recessions prior to that, I mean, getting past the experience of most people today, especially young people, they creep up on you and they often creep themselves out the door. Like they're not as severe as the two we've went through. And it's hard for us to understand what a normal economic contraction looks like when the two worst recessions from the Great Depression were the last two. Now, hopefully that doesn't become the norm. Hopefully these were just historical recessions that we get to walk away from and get to have our normal kind of bad, but not horrific recessions again. And they tend to come up a lot slower, tend to be not as quite severe, and we tend to get past them a lot quicker than we have. And so that's something to keep in mind, that we're not really accustomed to experiencing a mild recession. We've all been through unprecedented